Thank you. All right, let's get started here. So what we're going to do, first I'm going to talk a little bit about what the program is. And this is part of a grant from Visit Florida that is meant to help the counties that were affected by red tide kind of understand what that effect was. And you'll see as we go through here some of the components of that program to help update some of the information in this platform. So this is courtesy of Visit Florida. These are all the participants in the red tide program. As part of that grant. So we're doing a little bit of a tour here, and glad to be in Sarasota. I actually used to live here. I lived here for about 6 years. So it's fun to be back in Sarasota. We've done this program all over the country. If you take a look at that map, there are about 73 destinations that we have done this with, and this educational component in about 42 of those places. And the point of the education that we'll get to here in a minute is helping you understand all the different ways that you can use these tools to help expand the exposure for your business. And then we'll weave some of the red tide stuff in there as we go. Okay, the basis of this is a program that Google calls the DMO Partnership. And it is a set of tools that Google gives to DMOs, destination marketing organizations like Visit Sarasota, to help them provide all kinds of content in all of these different platforms. Okay, so it's about expanding and improving the coverage of the information about the destination in all of Google's products. And that's really at the core of what we're going to talk about today. There's a bunch of different components to that. I'll point out some of those as we go. But one of the key things here is that how your business looks is a really important part of how the destination looks when someone is planning a trip. And that's really at the base of this program. Okay? First, I'm going to be talking about this a lot, so I just wanted to point this out for those of you that aren't familiar with the terminology. This is the knowledge panel. So when I talk about the knowledge panel or the KP, this is all of the information that Google knows about your business, and you've seen it, I'm sure, on the side of a search. So you search for your business, you get the knowledge panel on the side. So when I talk about that, that's what I'm referring to. Everything that we're talking about today will be information that is going to feed into that knowledge panel. Okay, all kinds of different components that are part of that. Here's why this is important to the destination. All of these products, and if you were on the webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago, we talked very specifically about those products. There is a recording of that, so if you didn't see that and you are interested, we go into a lot of the products there. All of these products are built off of your business information down here at the bottom. So the business profile information, right, about your business, whether you're a restaurant or a museum or an attraction or a hotel, is at the bottom of this. These products are built off that information. And in turn, that's what someone sees when they're trying to decide whether or not to come to Sarasota and what they're going to do when they get there. Right? That's why this is so important to both your business, but also to the destination, because this is how a lot of people are making their decisions. Okay? Completed listings, completed business listings or business profiles, so that knowledge panel, having complete information, has a bunch of really important benefits. The first of which is that a completed listing is 7 times more likely to generate a click. Right? So if and we're really not talking about, when you'll see when we get to this, we're not talking about a whole lot of information. So having a completed listing is much more likely to generate a click, to have someone come through to look at either your website or to click through to more information about your business. It is almost 3 times as likely to be considered reputable. And this is a number that Google tracks for business profiles, because this is a really important distinction. When someone is trying to decide whether to go to this place or this place, whether or not they feel like it's reputable is an important metric. So almost 3 times as likely to be considered reputable. And then this is really the important one, 70% more likely to have someone visit your place of business. Okay, so if you've bothered to complete the information about your business profile, which again isn't going to be hard, right, then you are much more likely to actually generate someone coming in, and you'll see why when we start to look at some of the information here. Okay? All of this is important to you for 3 different reasons. The first is that knowledge panel is an enormous source of exposure for your business. And we talked more about this in that webinar, but I'll give you a little case study here. This is certainly not a typical case study, but it is a real one. It was provided to us by the Independence Visitor Center in Philadelphia. During all of 2017, they had 11,000 visits to their website. Okay? Not a whole lot of visits, not necessarily the most important part of their marketing platform, but all of 2017, they had 11,000 visits to their website. During that same time period, all of 2017, the business information for the Independence Visitor Center was shown in search 252,000 times. So already there's a big difference between the number of people that made it through to the website and the number of people who found the information that they were looking for in search. If we add maps and some of the other products to that, the number jumps to 11 million. So we go from 11,000 visits to 11 million exposures across a bunch of these different products for that business information. And I'm not telling you that the website is a visit to the website is the same thing as someone seeing that in a search or on a map, but I'm telling you that at 1,000 times more exposure, if you're going to spend an hour thinking about your website, you ought to be spending an hour thinking about what's happening in this platform, because it's a big source of exposure for your business information. Okay? Number two, and this is a lot of what that webinar was about, is that your business information shows up in way more places than you think. Okay? We know about the knowledge panel. You can type in the name of your business. You can see it in there. But that same information is going to be used in all kinds of different products across all of Google's ecosystem. And that's, again, is great because it means that you only have to update it in one place, and whatever new product they invent is going to use that same information. But it also increases that exposure, right? It increases the importance of making sure that you've taken advantage of everything that you can inside that platform. And then the third reason that this is important is that all of that information, more of it about your business is coming from your customers than it is from you. It's about 80%. So about 80% of the stuff about your business, photos, okay, we'll look at some of these examples, photos, reviews, questions, even fact checking, like your phone number and your hours, all of that stuff is coming from your customers. It's not necessarily coming from you, which is why it's important to pay attention to that. That is driven through a program called Local Guides. Local Guides is a crowdsourced program from Google Maps that is meant to do this, is meant to drive a whole bunch of content into Maps so that they can keep all of that stuff up to date without having to rely on just the business operators and owners. There are about, this says 50 million, that's actually from the end of 2017. There's about 70 million local guides worldwide. They add about 700,000 listings to Maps each month. And this is the really important one, and I'm going to come back to this later. The really important one is that the median response time for local guides is 20 minutes. Okay? So when someone posts a question, within 20 minutes, a local guide is there to answer that question. And that's great, but can also be a problem, which we'll see later when we get into talking about questions and answers specifically. If you're not familiar with the Local Guides program, you can join it. Anyone can join it. It's free as long as you have the Google Maps app on your phone, and I know you do. You can go to the little hamburger menu up at the top and you can add a photo. And when you do, every time you go into a place, it will say, do you know something about this place? And you can say yes or no, and then you can start answering questions. And the really interesting thing is, it used to be pretty simple. It used to be, post a photo. And then they started to add a little bit more things. It's actually become a huge source of information that the machine, the indexer itself, can't figure out. So here's a great example right in the middle. This is a suggestion. So I went into a place and it gave me this little pop-up and it said, hey, can you help us figure this out? Which of these photos is a better representation of this business? So think about that for you. Think about your business with the photos in there and the machine asking your customers which photo to choose. Okay, so they're starting to do a lot of a lot more interesting stuff with the Local Guides program. This is another one here. Is this the right phone number? You'll see later when we talk about name, address, and phone consistency that that's a really important component as well. So they're using that Local Guides program to try to validate what the right phone number is, what the right hours are, all of those factual pieces of information. These are all things that you can contribute as a local guide. Reviews, ratings, photos, videos, questions and answers, edits. They can move the pin for your business around, all kinds of different things. And that's great. Overwhelmingly, the program is positive. Most of the people who are local guides, most of those 70 million people, are very passionate about where they go. They're trying to help people decide where to go to find the best places in their destination. Okay? But what we're here partially talking about here today is it isn't always great. Right? This is also from the Local Guides program, and that's a lot of what this Red Tide is about, is understanding where are the places in these platforms that we can expect to see impact from things like Red Tide, right? And then what are the various actions that we can take to do that. And we can't pretend that red tide doesn't happen or that it didn't happen, but we can understand where to look for those kinds of things and what sort of impact to expect for them. Okay, so local guide's overwhelmingly great, but also produces stuff like this. And that's a lot of this program that we're doing in partnership with Visit Florida here and with Visit Sarasota, is doing an audit of all of this and trying to understand where all those impacts are. Where are the photos showing up? Where are the reviews showing up? Where are the questions and answers showing up? And how often do they show up, so that we can start to try to track what it looks like when there is impact from something like red tide. Okay, so there's an audit component. And then, probably most importantly, there's a content creation part of this program where we will be out in all of these affected communities shooting new content. So that's new photos, new 360 images, new street view, driving street view, stuff like that. And the point of that isn't to try to pretend that it didn't happen. The point of it is to show what it looks like right now. And that's a really important factor. I have a couple of different examples in here from Puerto Rico. Right? We're not going to pretend that there wasn't a hurricane in Puerto Rico, but I guarantee you it doesn't look that way anymore. And I'll show you some of those examples. Okay, so a big part of this program will be, we're going to be out in all of these different communities shooting street view. You may have, if you happen to have been in the park on Friday, we were in there shooting some street view in there, and we'll be continuing to do that as a part of this. Okay? The other part is industry education. That webinar was one of the components of industry education. This workshop, obviously part of that industry education as well. And then you have packets that are kind of takeaways. Most of the stuff we're going to talk about today will be in that packet. It's formatted a little bit differently though, so if you decide that you're going to follow along, you'll be disappointed. Okay, the overall goal is that we want to help you maximize all of your opportunities inside these products, because it's good for everybody. It's good for your business, it's good for the visitor, and it's good for the destination. It's good for Visit Sarasota as well, it's good for Florida, it's good for all of us, right? So when you take advantage of everything that you have available to you, everyone wins, is kind of the short answer. All right, I have 10. I'm going to go through 10 different ways to maximize your exposure in Google products. You're certainly welcome to take pictures. We will have some time at the end for questions, so make sure that you write that down. If you have questions you want to ask, make sure you write them down. We'll have some time for that at the end, and then there will be a copy of this presentation if you need to refer to some component of it. Okay? Here we go. Number one, we're going to start with some of the basics. This is really easy stuff. Number one is we want to make sure that the listing is verified and it's up to date. So the first question is your listing verified? And you can do that by typing in the name of your business and then looking at your KP, your knowledge panel, and if you see this little icon that says claim this business, it is not, right? Not so much anymore. There's a lot of different ways to do that. If you do happen to have some sort of problem with verification, Visit Sarasota. After this presentation, we can help you get verified, and there's a couple other tools that they can use that are part of the DMO partnership that can help you get verified if you need it. But if you don't see this logo, then you're verified. That's all good, right? Everything that we're going to talk about today will require you to be verified in order to take advantage of all of those components. All right? If you do need instant verification, these are some things that you would have to have. I'll skip right over that. We can come back to that if it turns out there are people who need verification help. Okay. So verified, number one. Number two, we want to make sure that we are going to the GMB dashboard, the Google My Business dashboard, and we want to make sure that we have all the base information updated. So there are lots of different ways to get there. This is an easy one, right? We're going to go to business.google.com and log in, and we're going to get the dashboard that is behind. Okay, and then in the dashboard, the first one is info. We want to go to the info tab. I just want to make sure all of this basic stuff is filled out. This is when we're talking about a completed listing before, 7 times more likely to generate a click. This is it. That's all we're talking about. Name, address, phone number, hours. You'd be surprised at how many people don't have correct hours. So having done this 73 times in 73 different destinations, when we do those audits, on average, about a quarter of the businesses are missing some piece of information, right? Sometimes as high as 60% are missing information. And those are really critical to those businesses and then ultimately to that destination, that even just this simple stuff is put in there. Okay, name, address, phone number. I'll show you some specific examples in here, hours, description, stuff like that. Okay, make sure those are in there. This is one that has been in and out of this, so if you come in and out of Google My Business, if you've been there before, and then you look at it every couple of months. Description is one that used to be there and then was taken away and now is back. You have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the info tab there to make sure that you update it. But if you missed that before, that's one that you can put in there. And then hours. You got to make sure your hours are up to date. It will bug you all the time if you have the app, or if you log into GMB, or it will email you and say you need to update your hours. And that's because increasingly these hours show up all across the platform. So this is a quick answer here. If we go to Google and we type in what time is XYZ business open, or is XYZ business open, then in a lot of cases Google is just going to give us a quick answer for that. And that's all driven off that Google My Business data, right? Important that we need to keep those hours up to date because it's going to get answered that way. Incidentally, if you have that speaker, right, the Google Home or the Home Hub, it's getting those answers from the same place, right? Is the coffee shop down the street open? And the speaker will tell you yes or no and when it's open. It's getting it from the same place. Okay. Interestingly, this is now included when we talk about insights later. These exposures are now counted in your insights data when we get to that and talk about that. Okay. You can also, this is a relatively new thing too, it used to email you and ask you if you had particular hours on a holiday, and it would try to remind you all the time. You can actually preload all of those now. It's a much easier way to do that in GMB, and that's fairly new. So if you haven't done that, you can go into your Google My Business dashboard and preload all of your special hours for the year, which makes that a lot faster than having to do it every time. This is a really key one. Okay, it sends you a thing and it says you need to update, are you going to be open on whatever day? Labor Day, I don't care, whatever the day is. And you think, well, I'm going to be open the same as I am anyway, so my hours are fine, I don't have to deal with that. That isn't the problem. The problem is if somebody looks at your listing versus someone else's listing on that day, Google will say, I don't know if they're open or not. Okay, so you have to positively identify for all of those holidays that you are open, because if you don't and you just leave your default hours in there, even if you're open the same hours, Google will say it might be different for that day. Write them down. I would love to answer the questions as we go, but I got a lot to get through. So there were a couple of different questions here. Please save them. I absolutely want to answer them. I will get to them as soon as I can get to them. Okay, enter special hours. You can also update your pin placement. This one is one that we don't necessarily think about. You can go into Maps and you can move the pin for where someone would arrive at your business. And this is pretty critical for navigation. So if we're trying to get to a particular place at your business, it's important that your pin is in the right place, and we don't always think about it. We just sort of let it put the pin where our address is. So if you are a very small business or you are in with a whole bunch of other businesses, I can almost guarantee you that your pin is not in the right place, right? If you're in a parking lot or a structure where you have a whole bunch of different businesses together, you go look at your pin. I bet it's not where your business is. And that's important for people who are walking, because if they're on the other side of the building from where they're supposed to be, then they're not going to find you. If you're in a very large business, same thing. You want to make sure that that pin shows up where someone would actually arrive, right? You don't want it in the back where the deliveries are made. You want it in the driveway in the front. So you can do that. Same thing in info. You go to where the address is, you go to the little pencil, and then you can drag the pin around. And it's worth checking. That's one of the things that local guides will update sometimes. It's worth checking once in a while just to make sure your pin stays where it is. Okay, that's a real quick one. All right, next one is a little bonus here, and I have a bunch of different bonuses as I go through here. Some of them are specific to business types, and other ones are general. This one is if you haven't downloaded the Google My Business app, you should do so. There's a bunch of features in there. This is really the first place where the features appear. So it has changed pretty substantially in the last 6 months. So if you haven't downloaded it, definitely do that. The key difference right now is that the messaging is integrated into the app. So if you used messaging before, and I used to have a segment where I talked about messaging, you used to have to set it up with an SMS and you had to go through a bunch of steps to do that. You don't anymore. It's actually integrated into the GMB app. Okay, so that's a real easy one. It's also a good way to get notifications, sometimes perhaps too many notifications. All right, a bonus for hotels. Hotels are sort of a special animal in this platform. They appear in many more places, but in a lot of ways they have less control than other business types do. The one place where they have many more choices and a lot more control than other business types is in what's called attributes. Okay, attributes are these tags that say things like, do you have beach access? Do you have a bar? Are you pet friendly? Right? All of these kinds of tags. And that's really important for the hotels because it determines where you're going to show up. So increasingly, we will see filters like this. So this is the Hotel Finder. A lot of effort has gone into that product. If you haven't looked at that product in a while, I suggest that you do so if you are a hotel because it's getting pretty good. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on in here, but there's a lot of these filters. So if you have not correctly identified that you are pet friendly or not pet friendly, whichever, right? And someone does that filter in here, you're not going to show up. And now you're missing out on exposure that's real easy exposure because you have it or don't. I can tell you, I used to do work with a bunch of hotels, and that was one of the things we fought all the time, is we would get attributes that would come in that weren't true, or attributes that didn't show up that were true. So definitely worth checking that if you are a hotel. Okay? Number 2, this one's a quick one, I promise. Some are longer than others. This one is about multiple categories. And we tend to think about, particularly from a search engine optimization perspective, that we don't want to split our attention, right? So we want to try to focus on one category or one kind of keyword so that we're not spreading out our traffic. And that isn't true in this platform. Okay, when you first signed up for Google My Business, it asked you what your primary category was, and you had to choose some categories. About 147 of them, something like that. Each year they add and remove some. Last year they removed 34 and added 36. Not a lot of fluctuation there. Different names, things come in and out. We're checking for that reason alone, but it's not obvious when you create your business listing that you can do more categories, right? It just says one. And so later on, what you do, you go after it's all set up, you're logging into Google My Business, you want to go to categories right here, and you see this one says organic restaurant and fine dining restaurant. And there could be others. So let's say we also serve seafood at that restaurant. Then we go over here, we add a subcategory, and then we look for something that matches that. So you can see right here is seafood restaurant, okay? There's a limit to this. You can't, I mean, you can't, if you think you're going to go in there and add car wash, and then get additional traffic because then people who are searching for a car wash, it's not going to work. But here, these are all true of this business, right? And you're going to expand the exposure that you have inside the platform pretty significantly. This is one of the best things in here. Okay, you can go in and in 5 minutes add a couple of categories and potentially get quite a lot more exposure out of that 5 minutes. And that's because of this thing. This is called the 3-pack. Okay, everyone here should be familiar with the 3-pack. This is a search result that is a combination of keyword and place. And that place can be either driven off, it can either be inferred or it can be explicit. So either you typed in the name of the place that you wanted it to be, or it's picking that up because you're using your phone and searching for a keyword at the same time. So it's going to produce this 3-pack. Why are these businesses in that 3-pack? Good question. There's a magical algorithm that figures that out that is secret sauce. But it is made up of these 3 components: distance, relevance, and prominence. Distance you can't do anything about, I guess, unless you're a food truck. Okay, you can't move closer to the person who's searching for you. So you have that's whatever it is. You can't really do anything about that. Relevance and prominence you can. We're talking about relevance here when we talk about categories, because in this search, this one is restaurants. Okay, but this could be seafood restaurants. Remember that business, the example that we had here? If we didn't have seafood in there, we're much less likely to show up in this 3-pack for a search that is seafood in a place, right? Seafood restaurants in Sarasota. Okay, so relevance, one of the best ways to do that is to add categories, and to add categories that make sense, not things like car wash. We'll come back to prominence. You're going to see this again, and we're going to talk about prominence because it's another one of the key factors for how you show up, whether or not you show up in that 3-pack. Okay? This one is about name, address, and phone. You may have heard this before. This is NAP. Name, address, phone consistency is an important ranking factor. It's also one of the important ranking factors for the 3-pack, and it has to do with where your name, the business name, your phone number, and your address appears across all of these different places. And the basic thing here is that Google goes out and indexes all of this stuff. Okay, places we didn't even think about existing anymore, like super pages or city pages or whatever, like old Yellow Pages site. Your business listing shows up in all of these places. And it goes through all of those and it tries to compare that information. And if the information is different, then you kind of get this like, I'm not sure if that's right. So if it's really, really different, then you're kind of doing yourself a disservice because Google's going to look at that and go, I don't really know whether this is a business or not. I don't know if it's at that place. I have conflicting addresses. I have conflicting phone numbers, things like that. If all of them are the same, right, then Google goes, oh, I got pretty high confidence. That's where this place is. It's been there for a while. This is what the phone number is. That's why name, address, phone is consistency is important. Okay, what do we do about that? There's a bunch of different tools that we can use to do that. You can search for them. I don't have any affinity for any of them. You can search for location data management. You may be using one of them right now. So some examples are Moz Local or Yext. And what you want to do with that tool is run a search for your business And it will go and try to find all of the places that your business appears and tell you which places are inconsistent. So this little chart, as an example, is from Moz Local. And the green ones are places where all of my information is consistent, and the red ones are places where I have things that are different. So what I would do with that as a business owner is I would look for these. This one is Facebook right here. So here's Google, first one, green, happy. Okay, Facebook has some red. So I would go over to Facebook, find my business listing, and try to figure out what's different. Sometimes it's different on purpose, and that's okay. But all things being equal, you want green across here. You want all of your information to be consistent because it's an important factor of whether or not you're going to rank in that 3-pack and in all of these other products, right? Whether you show up first or 100th in those lists. All right, number 4, check Insights, which is in Google My Business. If you don't look at this right now, this is another really valuable part of this. There's some really interesting information that you can only get in the Insights tab of your Google My Business dashboard. Okay, everyone here has a website and you look at your analytics regularly, right? Everyone does? Sure you do. Okay, so once a month, once a week, whenever you're looking at your analytics for your website, you also want to be looking for this. Because as we saw in that Independence Visitor Center example, if you're not looking at this stuff, you're missing out on an enormous amount of volume where people are seeing your business information. Okay? So in addition to looking at your Google Analytics, you want to understand what's going on with your website. We're going to come in here to Google My Business and look at these insights. These are a little more simplistic than what you can get there. But again, the only place you're going to get these are inside this platform. This first one is how people searched for your business. Okay? You can do this up to a quarter for 90 days. So for 90 days, this business had 728,000 searches. 728,000 times this business was surfaced in a search. The green ones are times where it was typed in, somebody knew the name of that business or some portion of the name, and the blue ones are places where they were discovered. Remember when we were just talking about categories? In theory, if you looked at the blue part of this and you went in and added 2 more relevant categories to your business, that blue would grow because those are places where you were being discovered, right? That blue would be a larger number because now you're getting results for seafood instead of just for organic restaurant in that little example. Okay, that's one example. Here's another one. This is the same thing we were looking at with the Independence Visitor Center. This is now adding a couple other products to that, mostly maps. This is the same business, by the way. 728,000 searches in 90 days. That's how many times they showed up in search. When we include maps, that number goes to almost 2 million. 1.88 million times that business was exposed. Okay, won't get this anywhere else. Can't get that in Google Analytics, only can get it here to see how many people are discovering your business inside those products. This is another one that is great. Can't get this one anywhere else. This is actions that people took in your knowledge panel. And those actions are visit your website, which you can kind of infer from your analytics. You can go in there and look and see how many people came in for organic, but you can't really filter it down to how many people came directly from your knowledge panel. That's what that number is. So visit your website, request directions, which is a really strong signal that someone is interested in your business. Again, one of the only places you're going to get that. That's how many people said, all right, where is that business? Probably they're thinking about coming in. They're going to be pretty serious about it if they ask for directions, okay? And then the last one is calls. Obviously, that's only people who clicked on the button in your knowledge panel to call, but again, you're not going to get that information anywhere else. There's also some other stuff in here that'll tell you where they asked for directions. Sometimes that's relevant, sometimes it's not. Again, can't find it anywhere else. It will give you some information about how you stack up with your competitors. This one you can't read, but it says that businesses with better photos get more exposure inside the platform, okay? This one is huge. This one is queries that people use to find your business. This used to be available, okay, back in before 2013 when we used to ride dinosaurs to work. You could get this information out of your analytics package. And after 2013, that was obfuscated. You couldn't get it anymore. This is the only place you're going to get it. You can go into Insights, and you can actually get a breakdown of the types of queries people use to find your business. What do you do with that? One of the things you can do with that is you can see if there are things that you didn't expect, right? Maybe people are finding your business in a way that you didn't expect that might be important, and the reverse is true. Maybe you think something that is really important to your business doesn't show up here, right? Maybe you're kid-friendly, as an example, and you don't see any of those in here. That would be an indication that you probably need to do a better job of communicating that to your customers, because they're not searching that way, and they're not finding you that way, okay? That one really valuable. This is another pretty interesting one. Remember the little local guide stuff that we saw earlier where it asks questions? You may have seen this. It says, is this a cozy place? Is it a romantic place? Is this a popular place? Those kind of subjective things. The indexer can't figure that out. A machine can't figure out whether or not it's cozy. So they have to ask the humans that. This is a representation in your insights of the answers that people are giving for your business. So again, you can look at that. You can't really influence what those questions are, but you can look at that and say, down here, so this is a great example. This one says good for kids. That's a very low number, said it was good for kids. So in this particular place with the hotel that I used for this example, that's true. That's 100% true, so that's happy. But if it was a family place and we saw that number was really low, that would be an indication that we weren't doing a good job of communicating that to the customers. Okay? This is a bonus that I've had in here. I have every week I give this presentation, and every week I have to check to see whether or not I can do this section. So you are lucky because today I can do this section. You can go in and download historical data for your business. So if you haven't done this in Google My Business, you should do this when you go home today. And the reason is it only goes back 18 months. So the sooner you do it, the older the data is that you will have to compare later. It's totally obvious. You can see from my diagram here, it's perfectly obvious how to download that. Not really. So you want to go to Manage Locations. You're going to check this box here. This is the only part you need to remember. Manage Locations, check the box, go over to the Actions tab right there. The rest of it is self-explanatory. Okay, so that's the most important part. You want to remember to do that, and then the rest of it is kind of you can work through. You can choose dates. You can go back as far as you want. Typically what I do, I go in and do it month by month. I start 18 months back, and I pull them month by month and put them into a big spreadsheet. Once you do that, then you only have to do it once a month moving forward. But at least you have 18 months of historical data. Also, another reason to be verified, because if you're not verified, you won't get any of this data. Okay, and I can come back to that one if we need to do that one. Number 5 is about reviews. This is actually one of the places where we see a lot of impact from red tides. We'll talk about that briefly here. The first thing about reviews is you need to know when they happen. So if you don't have this setting, and you aren't getting an email every time somebody puts a review on your business, you are missing out on a lot of important information. So this is down in the settings, and then it's one of the first ones in settings, and it says customer reviews. And if you check that box, you will get an email every time someone posts a review. And that's important because you got to keep track of both the good ones and the bad ones, but mostly you have to keep track of your vector. And we'll talk about this here in a second. Remember that the 3-pack we talked about earlier, that's a really key ranking factor, is whether your reviews seem to be stable or improving or going down. Okay? So you can respond to reviews, right? Like it'd be great in a perfect world, everyone would be responsive and they'd be responding to the reviews. In reality, sometimes there's hundreds of them, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. If you want to respond to a positive one, we'll talk about some examples of those. That's fine. The important ones are you want to watch the negative ones. Okay? This is about prominence. This little Venn diagram here. Okay? Distance, we talked about relevance. Prominence is the one that has to do with your rating and your ranking inside this platform. So how many stars people give you, and whether or not it was a positive or negative review. And the reason is that if you start to look, let's say you're in the 3-pack right now for a seafood restaurant or a museum or whatever, and you're in the 3-pack for your community, and you start to look like your reviews are going down, and you have this downward vector, you can fall out of that 3-pack, and it's really, really difficult to get back in it. So the most important part is that you know when someone posts a bad review about your business, so that you can address whatever that issue is, because you do not want to get a series of those in a row. I used to have a chart in here that was from a nightclub. It was in one of the hotels that I did work for. And they were in the 3-pack forever. They were always in the 3-pack. And one day they discovered that their organic traffic was tanking, and they said, why? Why is that? And the answer is they fell out of the 3-pack. Their chart went like this, and then it went, whoo, and fell off a cliff, and was really difficult to try to recover. That's why you want to pay attention to reviews. You want to know when you get a bad one, and then what do you do about it, okay? This is a positive one. If you want to respond to a positive review, these are things you want to keep in mind. You want to reuse your name. Reuse your business name, reuse your products, mention other products, try to expand on any of those things, because if this gets indexed, right, we want to have that be part of the discussion. This is our opportunity to add more things. Somebody said, I really enjoyed your whatever boat tour. You should try our, hula hoop tour, or whatever it is, okay? You should add those things into those, because if they get indexed, then we're getting more information out. The reverse is true of negative reviews. Okay, we don't want to say that. Hey, I'm so-and-so from this business. These are the products that I have. We want to try to reduce the times where those get indexed, or if they do, we don't want to make it any worse than it already is. Best thing about negative reviews, short as possible. If you can get them to contact you offline, this is your one shot to do this. Okay, which is why you need to know that there was a 1-star review that happened today. You need to get that email, and then you need to respond. Your only mechanism is to respond through Google My Business and ask them to contact you offline. You cannot incentivize them, you cannot pay them, you cannot, right? All of those things are against the terms of service. But if you resolve their issue, you can politely say, this is really important to my business. You know, it would be great if you would go in. If you felt like I resolved your issue, you could change your review to something. Even if they change it to a 3-star, it's pretty neutral at that point. Okay? This isn't going to happen every time. This isn't going to happen most of the time. But I'm telling you that because you need to know one 1-star review is worth a lot more than 5 5-star reviews, right? When you get one, you got to be right on top of that. And it may just be an issue may just be an issue with your way you're doing business. May be completely irrelevant, but you got to know about it, because if you're not paying attention to it, then it's just going to slip right out from underneath you. Okay, you can flag reviews. This is one of the most common questions we get. Can I get rid of reviews, right? These reviews aren't any good. I don't want them on here. There are a couple of ways you can do that. There's a little shish kebab menu over there. You can flag them as inappropriate. The problem is that there's a really narrow band of reasons that you can flag them as inappropriate. Okay, most of them are pretty obvious. Some of them I've never seen, okay? Spam is pretty obvious, you know, illegal content, sexually explicit, I've never seen one, right? A lot of this stuff doesn't happen. The ones that do are impersonation and conflict of interest. Those are the ones you need to know about. Okay? Because those are the ones that are easy to remove. Impersonation goes like this. My brother-in-law had the worst time at your place of business. Okay? That's impersonation. The terms of service say you have to have a first-person review. It has to have happened to you. You can't post it for your mom. You can't post it for your friend. So that's an easy removal. If you have a bad review, you have a 1-star review, and it says that in there, that's technically impersonation. You can flag that as inappropriate, and you can have that, ask to have that one removed. Obviously, if it was a good review, it was a 5-star review that said my mother-in-law had the best time there, then just don't flag it. You just leave it alone. But it's important to know, because when you see those things, you can take them out. The other one is conflict of interest, and those are the conflicts of interest over there, which is reviewing your own business. Don't do that. Review by a competitor and by a former employee. And those are all real common questions that we get, where employees will post certain things into the platform. That is technically against the terms of service, and you should be able to remove those as well by flagging them as inappropriate. Okay? I will tell you, though, that the volume of flagging has, and I don't, I would love to claim responsibility for this, but I doubt it has anything to do with me. The volume of those claims has gone up so high that you will now get this warning message. So when you go home today and you go into Google My Business and you say, I'm going to flag this as inappropriate, it will tell you, hey, just so you know, don't expect anything, right? Because there's such high volume that it's really hard to review. I still think it's still worth doing, right? Especially if it violates one of those things. I just wouldn't hold your breath. Okay? So that warning is coming up now. I'm also going to give you another one in a minute that is a shortcut there. Okay, the bonus here, and this is really the best thing to do. So if we can get rid of a review, if we can respond to a 1-star review and get someone to call us, fantastic. Otherwise, mostly what we want to do is try to keep our vector going up or being stable by getting positive reviews. How do we do that? Okay, when I used to do the hotels, we had a little card. If you're a hotel type, you probably do this at the front desk. And you go to check out and you say, did you have a good time? And if they say, I had a great time, then you get a little card and you say, hey, we'd really appreciate a review. If they say, I had a terrible time, it was awful, then we don't give them that card, right? Real simple. So you can create a link for your business and you can politely ask people to give you a review. This does matter, okay? This matters a lot to your exposure inside Google's products, is whether or not you have positive reviews. So even just a nice little note in there, somebody had a good time, they enjoyed your business, those are all really helpful to keep your vector stable or even going up. Okay? How do you make a link? The link is a horrible link if you've ever done that. You can tell them to go into the knowledge panel and write a review, but this is my recommendation. Go to your own knowledge panel, go to write a review. It will bring this little pop-up. See this enormous URL at the top? Copy paste this enormous URL and then print it on a t-shirt. No. Don't do that. Take this enormous URL and then put it in a URL shortener and make up something that you can tell people to use. Okay, and you can say, you can put it on a card, you know, you can hand it out to people, or you can just print it in there, you know, put it up at the desk or something. But the more positive ones you get, the better off you're going to be. And that's really the kind of the best way to deal with this, with that vector idea, is making sure that you are encouraging the right kinds of customers to post those reviews. Okay? Number 6 is about photos. Photos are another place where the volume of photos that are going to be provided is going to be much, much higher from your customers than it is from you. And this is true of almost every business, because every business goes in there and they set up their business listing and they put a couple photos in, and they go, good, I'm done. And they move on. And that's not something that you want to do. You want to think about having some sort of plan where you're going to add additional photos. They don't have to be professional. You don't have to hire a photographer for thousands of dollars to come take your pictures. You just want to think about, what am I going to add? What can I add that will keep my content fresh? You will never overwhelm the consumer photos, so that's not the point. The point is, you don't want 100% of the photos in your listing to be from your customers, right? You want to have a say in what those are. And the best way to do that is to add your own photos. What kind of photos do we add? These are the things. We've done this 73 times, right? We've done this all these different times. We looked at all of the different photos, and this is the as close as we're going to get to a formula for what that platform likes, right? What you have to think about is that this is an algorithmic platform that is trying to pretend to be a human. So what does a human want? And that's what this is about. Number 1 is it should be informative. You might have a beautiful picture of a waterfall or a texture or something in your place of business, but if it isn't informative about the kind of business that you are, unless you're a waterfall store, right, that's not important information to put in there. It's not informative. That's the number 1. Number 2 is you want it to be attractive, because this is all based on humans, whether or not it's eye-catching. So you will see, as you look around in this platform, you will see that oversaturated photos tend to do better than undersaturated ones. I'll show you an example here in a minute. Bright colors, dark darks, light lights, those are the kinds of things that are eye-catching. So if you're going to take a picture, that's sort of what you want to look for. And then the last one is representative. This is a question that I get a lot. You know, should there be people in there? Should it be during a fair? Should it be during an event? You want to be, this is what the business looks like. This is what you should expect if you're going to come in there. So you don't really want to take it during the time that's really busy, unless I guess you're always busy. You want to try to avoid seasons. We try to avoid taking pictures of Santa Clauses because it doesn't make a lot of sense the rest of the year, right? So those are the 3 things that you want to keep track of if you're going to take a photo and put it into your business listing. And again, you don't have to doesn't have to be something that's professional, okay? But it is worth making a couple of tweaks to this. Here's an example of a good and a bad, okay? The good one, we know what it's of, says what it's of. We know where it's taken from, right? Pretty obvious what the subject is. It's got bright colors. It's attractive. It's informative. It's ticked all of our boxes. The other one is exactly the same place, exactly the same thing, but is a bad version of that photo. It's off kilter. The colors are muddy. We're not really sure what's going on. You can't even read the sign. This is the same sign, but you can't read it. That's a great example of a good versus a bad. This one's eye-catching. It's informative. Ticks all of our boxes. That one doesn't do any of them. Okay? And it's worth doing this because there's a huge difference in the quality of the photos in terms of how many people see them. So this is the same dish at the same restaurant taken at the same time. One of them taken from a little bit different angle and not as bright in the colors. This one taken from higher above, nice composition, right, bright colors. 10 times the amount of exposure for that photo. Right? It's worth taking a little bit of time just to make sure that you have a nice looking photo in there. And again, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to have somebody do it. You can just do it with your phone. Right? Partially what we want to do is make sure that better to have something that you are putting in there frequently, right? Once a month on some sort of schedule than it is to take a bunch of them all at once and dump them in there. These are some other ones. These are in your packets. I'm not going to bore you with these. The important ones here are the highest resolution you can get, right? We have a tendency to think about web. Well, I can use a really tiny image. Don't. Use whatever the largest resolution image you can put in there. Obviously, you take it with your phone. It's going to be fine. And then the other one is you want to think about mostly horizontal images. It's a little strange because most of the people are going to consume this on a phone, but almost all of the products preference a horizontal image over a vertical one because of the way that it fits inside the product. So not that you can't take vertical ones, you should take a few of those, but you should definitely focus mostly on horizontal images. And then just a couple other notes in terms of what we see in the platform. Stuff that is properly formatted works better than stuff that isn't. So see how the horizon line is nice and straight here and then isn't over there? We want to keep our verticals, horizontals, and verticals straight. Also nice bright colors here. right? Very eye-catching. The other thing you can do inside the same Photos tab is you can add videos. And videos can be, you can shoot a video on your phone. You're supposed to shoot it in that vertical format like that for 10 seconds. Or if you have an existing video, you can upload it. That can be 30 seconds long. So you can do all of that inside your Google My Business dashboard. You can upload your own little video segments. Great thing to think about. New product, new service, something going on that is eye-catching. And as you scroll through you can see over there, okay, as you scroll through the photo gallery, that little video is great at grabbing attention. You see how it moves in there, okay? Great little easy ad. You can also flag photos for removal, right? So, and there's a couple other places that we can do this. So here's another one of those red tide photos in the background. Local Guides took that. It's in there. What do we do about it? Kind of depends on what the photo is. Another case where we have a narrow band of things that we can do. The best ones are going to be poor quality or not a photo of this place. Okay, and you can go in and flag them. If you think you have a compelling reason that the photo shouldn't be there for some other thing, there is an other box and you can check that. What you want to do is go up into the corner, there's a little flag icon up there, and you can click that flag and say this photo doesn't belong, right? Or you can say why. This is a subjective thing, okay? And someone, a human on the other end, has to make a decision about whether or not that is really a removal or not, and they tend to err on the side of it's consumer-generated content. Not that it isn't worth doing, it absolutely is. Just don't hold your breath that it gets removed, especially if it's a subjective thing. You're really better off trying to take more pictures, which is part of what we're doing with this Red Tide program, is trying to generate brand new photos that are current today that say this is what it looks like right now, rather than spending too much time on we're going to try to fight about whether or not this photo belongs in there. Okay? If there is a photo that you think just absolutely does not belong, and this happens sometimes. Business listings have photos frequently of some other place. This isn't my business, right? This isn't somewhere that has anything to do with me. It doesn't belong in here. Sometimes those can be hard to get rid of. You can use the support. There's a little support tab down here, and you can work your way through the knowledge, whatever it is, graph thing that they have there. And you work your way through there and find this feedback thing you can ask to have them contact you. That works about 50% of the time. But I have a secret, and that secret is this next one, which is this link. So that's bit.ly/GMBgo, and you have to use the caps, otherwise you get an Arabic website. I don't know what it says. Sorry about that. I didn't know that when I made it up. GMBgo, you have to use the right caps there, but it will take you directly to this page where if you are logged in with an account that owns your businesses, then you can ask directly. And this one we've had really good response on. Okay, so if you have a problem that just absolutely cannot be solved, you can't figure out how to get it, this is how your best shot at getting someone on the Google My Business support team to respond to whatever your issue is. Remember that when they're subjective, they have a tough time, right? These are people who don't really know anything about your business. They're going to have a tough time making those subjective calls, okay? But that's your best bet. We've had really good luck with this in the last couple of weeks, getting stuff resolved using that form. So I guess use it while you can. Last one in photos is about setting the cover photo. This didn't used to work. So if you did this in the past, you would go in and set a logo and an identity, and then you would set a cover photo, and then where did it appear? And it appeared nowhere. That photo just went off it actually went into Google+. Now, if you go in and set your cover photo in GMB, you probably have about a 75% chance of that being your first photo. It's really one of the key control points that you have over your business listing at this point, is trying to decide what that first photo is. If you put so I say 75% because if you put a photo in there that is a coupon that says 20% off and it isn't really a photo, it's not going to stick, right? You won't be able to put that in there. But if you put a good quality photo, you followed the stuff we were talking about, it was informative, it was attractive, right? It was representative, chances are you'll be able to replace that photo and you can actually pick which one shows up first in your little gallery. You don't get to pick the rest of them, but you do get to pick the first one, okay? Number 7 is about questions and answers. This is one of my favorite sections. Questions and answers are part of the knowledge panel. So in your knowledge panel, there's a little thing that says ask a question. And this is a fantastic opportunity for customers to ask you questions about your business, right? Great. I'm going to go in. Do you have a gluten-free menu? Do you have this? Do you have that? Whatever the question is, it gets sent to the owner of the business, and then they can respond, and it's all public. Right? So you can see it inside the knowledge panel. Questions that are frequently asked are going to be more likely to show up in there. All of that is great, except it gets answered. Remember when we were talking about the local guides earlier? They had a 20-minute response time. These get answered by the local guides before they ever get answered by the owners. Okay? And sometimes they're really helpful and sometimes not. I don't know if you can read this one or not. This is my favorite. The question is, when is the fall motorcycle meet? And this, our helpful local guide has said, I would say in the fall. Thanks, man. That's super helpful. So if we look at some of the other questions, and this evolved over time, the screenshots that I took here, someone said, I think it's the third weekend in October. Okay, that's better. We're getting closer, right? I think, but I don't really want to think. I want to know. This is a pretty authoritative answer. I don't know if it's true, but it's authoritative. It says it's always the second weekend of October, and if the 1st of October falls on a Sunday, the second weekend will be the, right? That's a very, very detailed answer, and that is from a local guide. Why did we have to wait for a local guide to do that? That should have been the owner. The owner should have been the first person to answer that, and they should have answered it this way, right? And the reason is that the business owners don't know it's happening. And they don't know it's happening largely because it's a product that exists outside of Google My Business. It is in your knowledge panel, but it is not a product that has to do with Google My Business, so you will not find it in your Google My Business dashboard. It is a search product, and so exists in this sort of weird ether outside of those two things. Okay, this is an analysis that was done. This is a little bit older now. Moz is a search engine optimization company, if you know Moz. Tons of great information there. They did a little study back when the questions and answers first came out, and they had 123 businesses in San Francisco. Of those 123, 25% had questions that were posted in the knowledge panel. What percentage of those had answers from the owners? Zero. Zero had answers because they didn't know. They didn't know it was happening. They had no way to tell whether or not that was happening inside their knowledge panel. So 0% of them had answers from the owners. And that's a really big miss, right? Like, this is a great opportunity to interact with your customers directly and answer the kinds of questions that they have that we're not taking advantage of. Coincidentally, then, this is also where we see a lot of red tide stuff. We see lots of questions that are about red tide. That's where a lot of that conversation is happening, okay? Photos, definitely. Takes a little bit more effort to do a photo. Questions and answers, this is where people who are prospective visitors are saying, should I even go there? Okay, so this is a really important thing to watch, is the questions and answers, be aware of what's going on there and be able to answer and direct those questions. Again, we're not going to pretend that that it isn't a thing or that it didn't happen. We just want to make sure that we're providing the most up-to-date information for people in that questions and answers panel. So, you can get notified. Remember earlier we talked about getting notified when you get a review. There's another checkbox right below that for questions and answers. So that's in settings, and we go in here and then check the box, and then you'll get a ping on your phone every time someone posts a question so that you know that you should do something about it. The other thing you can do, so this is what the email looks like. It says reply. You can go over there and it'll say from owner. The other thing you can do is flag those. So if you have things that are in there that you don't think belong anymore, we have much better choices when it comes to questions and answers. And if you see over there, there are two really important ones. One of them is incorrect information, right? So I'd say in the fall, that might be incorrect information. There's no choice for smartass, but there should be. The other one says no longer applies, and that's a really easy one, right? This doesn't apply anymore. So you can go into all of those questions and answers, and you can flag the answers and the questions individually and try to give Google's algorithm the indication whether or not these are really relevant anymore. Okay, so those are really easy ones. And then the other thing is you can post your own. You're actually encouraged to in the terms of service. So if you have an FAQ, you have a frequently asked questions, take every one of those, post your own question, and then answer it, right? So then you're providing the kinds of questions that your customers answer or ask, rather, and you're doing it up front instead of waiting to see what happens inside that platform. So that's a really easy one. Take all your FAQs, put them into questions and answers. And again, you can just do that right now, just as if you're a regular user, okay? As long as you're logged in, go to your knowledge panel, go to post a question, post your own question, then you'll get the email and you'll answer it yourself. And if you're like me, you'll be like, oh, I got an email. Who's that from? Oh, wait, it's from me. You can also do, this is one of the only places where we have the little thumbs up, and this is another thing you can do in there. So you thumbs up the ones that you like, and just don't thumbs up the ones that you don't like. There's no downvote in questions and answers. Okay? Number 8 is about posts. This is free real estate if you're not already using posts. Posts have been around for probably close to 18 months at this point. They appear in your knowledge panel. They are a photo and some amount of copy. You can put links in there. There's actually a ton of stuff that you can do in there. So if you're not using posts already, this is the best 15 minutes you'll spend every week. So the posts are live for 7 days. Spend about 15 minutes putting a photo and a link and some copy in there, and you're going to get a ton of real estate for free in your knowledge panel that you actually control what the message is in there. It's also one of the only places you can put your own tracking codes. Okay, usually you have to pay for that. You have to do AdWords or pay-per-click if you want to have tracking codes in there. You can put your own tracking codes in there. You can put a coupon in there. There's a bunch of different formats. So this is under posts here. You can add a post. It'll give you some examples of different kinds of posts. You can do an event, an offer, a new product. Doesn't really matter what's in there. It's just a tremendous amount of exposure. So you could use the same thing. You could go in once a week, put in 2, and we recommend that you do 2 each time. So every Monday morning you could put in 2 of those, let it ride for the week, and then put the same 2 back in if it's still relevant to your business. Because remember, when we looked at that Independence Visitor Center, there are millions of people who are looking at these things, right? Millions of eyeballs. We don't want to miss that opportunity to catch them. Some best practices, okay, same thing we were talking about with photos. We want something that's eye-catching. Less important that it's representative, less important that it's informative here. Definitely important that it's eye-catching. We want to make sure that we have a really good-looking photo that people will want to look at. Don't bury the lead. Put whatever the most important stuff is in the first like 80 characters, because the rest of it gets cut off. And you can put all kinds of stuff in there, including your tracking link, which is shown down here at the bottom. And if you're not using tracking links, that's a whole other presentation, but you should make sure that you're doing that. These are a few different examples: an event, an offer, a news item. These are all the buttons that you have that you can use at the bottom. So you're fixed to a number of buttons. Right? But these are the buttons that you can choose, and there's some pretty powerful ones in there if you want to give people an offer of 15% off or 5% off, stuff like that. Okay, best practices, just mentioned, so you want to do 2 at a time because it maximizes your exposure there, and again, it doesn't really take a whole lot longer than doing 1. You can reuse the same stuff that you have in other platforms. If you have a post that you put in Facebook or Instagram or something else, take that same picture and a little bit of copy, put it right here in your Google My Business dashboard, and get yourself some extra exposure. Okay? Number 9 is about 360 images. A lot of what we're going to be doing in the Red Tide content generation program will be 360. That's both street view, like individual photospheres, and also driving street view. And that's because the 360s are getting a lot more preference inside these products. And largely that's because the quality of the cameras has improved drastically. So stuff from just a couple of years ago had weird missing feet and all kinds of stuff in the images, and the new camera equipment is drastically better, even at the $400 level. Okay, so 360 imagery is incredibly important, and it's a really useful way to add information about your business. It's obviously informative, right? It gives people the ability to look around inside your business. Increasingly, this is a way that people decide whether or not they're going to come to you or someone else. They can see what's there. They can get an idea whether or not, how big is the place, what kind of products do they have, how crowded is it. Those are all things that they might want to know before they go down there. You can do this yourself. You can go buy a camera on Amazon for $400. You can take 360 images and post them right into your business listing. You can build a little virtual tour. You see the arrow in between there. You can walk around inside your business if you want to do that. There's also other compelling reasons to do that out on the street. So this is a hotel that's in, actually this happens to be in Puerto Rico, but they were doing construction at the time that the Street View car came by. You might have that. I often have businesses say, hey, there's a garbage truck in front of my business. How do I get rid of that? And you can do that because you can go buy that camera, or you can hire someone, which I'll tell you about in a second. You can go buy that camera and go out on the street, take a new picture, and upload it into the platform, and you've got a pretty good chance at getting that overwritten. Okay? You can actually have that photo replace the one that shows the construction or whatever is going on at your business. So that's a really important aspect. You can do it yourself, but there's also a program called Street View Trusted where you can hire someone to do that. You probably have seen them. There's probably people who came through your business and they offer to do a virtual tour for some number of dollars. Sometimes that number is $500, sometimes $5,000. It's not really a going rate for that, which is something for you to remember. You can go to this one down here. This is Google Street View, google.com/streetview/hire. If you want to find someone who's here in Sarasota that can take those photos for you. It's worth thinking about. There's a lot of labor that goes into it, and it's not a bad idea to have somebody come in who already knows what they're doing if you want to shoot 360. Certainly can do it yourself, but worth asking somebody what it costs to do it, especially because then you don't have to buy the equipment yourself. So if you do that, make sure you look at their portfolio. And I will tell you that the Google Street View Trusted program is a pretty low bar. And I feel like I can say that because I am a Google Street View Trusted photographer. So it's really just that we're able to upload 50 images without, I guess, stumbling over it yourself. So it's not a real high bar. You want to make sure that you look at whatever their portfolio is and feel like, these are good images. They know what they're doing. This is exactly what I want to have representing my business before you do that. Okay, 360s, great opportunity. The question we always get about 360s, I took the 360s, what do I do with it? It's in my business listing. Are there other places I can put it? And the good news is that you can grab that out of your gallery. So you go into your photo gallery, you find the 360 that was posted, and you go up here and you can go to embed a map and you copy paste this. You can put it in your blog or in your website. And that's a great way to say, hey, check out our new products, or we just redesigned this part of the business, or there's a meeting space, right? All of those different, there's a new exhibit, any of those things. You can put that and reference it, and it will work on all the platforms. The problem we used to have with 360 is we would take the 360 and then we would say, hey, look at our 360, but no one had the player. And so now you're in the IT business because people are calling you saying it doesn't work. Okay, Street View is great for that because it works on all of the platforms. So this is a really great way to extend that. You took the picture, but you can also use it in a bunch of other places to reference whatever it is that you took the picture of. All right, last one, and then we will get to questions, I promise. Number 10 is look for reserve with Google features. This is really more of a forward-looking one. It's a really interesting thing that is happening inside this platform. I predict that this will be increasingly the case for businesses. And this is about booking or buying inside the knowledge panel. Okay, so reserve with Google, and I'll show you this example here in a second. This says find tickets. I'm inside the knowledge panel. This is for the Empire State Building, and I can push that find tickets button, and I'll show you what that does. This was a program that's actually been around for a while, and it was primarily for spa and health. So you could book a massage or a yoga class, stuff like that, inside the knowledge panel. Usually people who were smaller businesses didn't necessarily have the ability to book that elsewhere, and so it was a great place for Google to start. Increasingly, though, that stuff is now available for a whole bunch of other types of businesses, right? So here we're seeing with the Empire State Building, they're really expanding the number of places that can do that. Here's the key example, right? All of these, I apologize, you can't read all of these. All of those are museum, attraction, events, ticketing platforms. Those aren't anymore restricted to yoga and massage and haircuts and stuff like that. Now we're getting stuff like Eventbrite is on there, Fair Harbor. All of those that are highlighted are like ticketed experiences. So if you're a museum, if you're a tour, you are a fishing charter, you're any of those things, you can actually, if you're using one of these platforms, you can actually have someone book your entire experience without ever leaving the knowledge panel for your business inside Google. And I predict that this will be increasingly the case for businesses in their platform. Here's what it looks like. You go to the Empire State Building, keep in mind, this is all inside the knowledge panel. Okay, I can choose the date, I can choose which one I want to do, I can choose the time, I can choose how many people, and then I can pay. I go through the entire thing, pay, book my tickets, done, never left the knowledge panel for that business. All of that stuff shows up here under bookings, and you can see if you were already using one of those platforms and you go to the Google My Business dashboard, look for this bookings button, and it will tell you what integrations are available. And in some cases, it may already appear there. If you are a restaurant and you use OpenTable, you probably already know this one because OpenTable shows up in that tab. Okay, the reverse is also true. So this is another question I get from restaurants in particular. This is an ad for DoorDash. Right? And this is a restaurant and then has an ad for DoorDash in it. That's paid for by DoorDash. This restaurant doesn't want that. How do you get rid of it? And the answer is you have to go to DoorDash and ask them to remove your listing. Remember earlier when we talked about name, address, phone consistency? That's another place that your business listing appears that you didn't even know it appeared. So you have to go to the source of that, whatever that is. There's a couple of them. Uber Eats is one of them. And you go to them and say, I don't want to be included in your program if you don't want that ad showing up. Okay? Last one, a little bonus for restaurants. There's actually an enormous, if you don't know about this already, there's an enormous menu builder inside the Google My Business dashboard that you can do for your restaurant. And you can actually go through prices and explore the whole thing inside the knowledge panel. Another great way to expand the exposure and to give them more information inside your knowledge panel. Only works for restaurants. If you have a fresh menu that changes every day, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but if you have a pretty stable menu, this is a great way to add some additional exposure. People spend a little bit of additional time in your knowledge panel looking at what you have, and that's one of the #1 questions they ask anyway, right? What do they have? How much is it? Okay, there we go, all 10 of them. I'm going to leave this one up while we do the questions in case you want to review any of those or we need to go back. But that is my 10 tips for maximizing your exposure, and I thank you very much for coming. It's been wonderful to have so many people here today. And we do have, I think we have about 15 minutes for questions. So anyone, I know that